More of the Andrew Lawton Show, an interview in studio and live with Freedom Party leader Paul McKeever in just a few moments. Stay with us, London. Good afternoon, London. This is Canada's most irreverent talk show, the Andrew Lawton Show, on AM 980, London's breaking news station, and promising you the best of the best for coverage of this ongoing election saga here. We had last week Andrea Horvath and Tim Hudak on the show talking about the election campaign. Our next guest we've had on the program numerous times in the past, but this is, I believe, your first election time visit here. The leader of the Freedom Party of Canada, or of Ontario rather, also a candidate in London-Fanshawe. Paul McKeever joins us. Paul, it's great to have you in studio for once.
Nice to be here, Andrew.
So, you are not just the leader of the party, but you've actually chosen a London riding in which to run. Talk to me a little bit about why London-Fanshawe, because I know you're not a London guy as of this point anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have a London history, of course. I spent many years here, and in fact, I worked at Cohen Hiley for a year before starting up my own law practice. But London-Fanshawe is a strategic part of a strategic plan for a Freedom Party. All parties, if they're going to win seats in the legislature, have to start somewhere. Where we see the support swelling is right here in the whole city of Toronto. Not Toronto, in London, but not in Toronto as much. Toronto hasn't had the exposure that London has had. And so we're focusing our key candidates, Salim Mansour, Al Gretzky, myself, and Claire Maloney down in Elgin, Middlesex, London, who was a former councillor in the area. So we think that London deserves a special effort. We're bringing 4 candidates to the City of London so that people have the confidence to vote for Freedom Party and know that when they put that person in the seat in the legislature, they'll know how to deal with the work and the problems before them.
And this brings a question that I know you've faced before, which is why would someone vote for the Freedom Party? I mean, how do you sort of justify asking someone for their vote when you don't have any sort of demonstrable electoral success?
Well, I mean, at this point, a lot of the candidates won't have any demonstrable, no matter what party they're in. So, to a certain degree, we're on an equal playing field. What we bring to the table that the other parties don't is a very different way of looking at what government should be doing at this point in time, especially on 3 main issues. One is the budget. We have presented to the legislature 3 years in a row a detailed budget plan to balance the budget in that year and every year thereafter. None of the other parties has put that forward, despite what Mr. Hudak would have us believe. The second big issue that we're targeting, and we think it's one that Londoners resonate to as well, is the whole issue of the existing deals with the power producers, the power generators. None of the other parties are talking about what are you going to do with the deals that are already in place. Freedom Party saying, pull the plug. We now have the Ontario Court of Appeal saying you can do that without a penalty. Freedom Party saying it's about time we did it. We're going to do it now. Whereas the other parties are all saying, well, we won't extend the green plan too much, but we'll keep everything we've got in place right now. You can't do that. It's already to the point where the electricity is so expensive, nobody wants to set up business here. People can't afford to pay their bills. And the third thing, and it's really the most important thing, is reestablishing trust in government. We've had scandal after scandal after scandal in this province under the Liberals. Too many times, I've not seen the opposition opposing. I'll give you an example. We're going to be looking at the Pan Am Games. The province is going to be saddled with cost overruns. There are already cost overruns. So we'll have one of the PC MPPs, Rod Jackson, going around, I think his name's Rod Jackson, going around saying, oh, the scandal in the Pan Am Games. Well, where were you when your entire party voted in favor of Ontario backing and picking up the tab for the 2015 Toronto Pan Am Games? So there is no credibility in the 3 parties in the legislature on the issue of containing costs, getting the budget balanced, or dealing with this electricity situation. Those are the big issues. Those are the big money issues. And the only people talking about that are Freedom Party people.
Yeah, and you mentioned, in the course of that answer, the importance of addressing the debt. And we're hearing a lot of talk in this campaign about jobs. Certainly Tim Hudak's Million Jobs Plan has hijacked a lot of the discussion and forced other parties to come out with their jobs plan. So I want to get your take on the job situation in Ontario, because that's certainly something that London has been hit with, most notably recently anyway with the Kellogg plant, but even going back a couple of years, we have the electromotive diesel closure. What do you think is the role of government provincially in the jobs discussion?
Well, I'm an employment lawyer by trade. So for the last 17 years, I've been dealing with employee after employee after employee, thousands of employees who had their jobs sent to Mexico, sent to China, sent to India. I have firsthand experience with all this in the thousands. I litigate over this stuff. When I hear Tim Hudak saying he's going to cut 1,000 Ontario jobs, I, as an employment lawyer, say, aha, severance packages for the lot of them. If it's 100, seriously, and if it's 100,000 people being tossed off the payroll, that's 100, and he's talking managers. I heard him this morning saying he's targeting managers. Those are non-union jobs, which means they're each entitled to sue for wrongful dismissal, and they're each entitled to a severance package. And I can tell you right now, the government of Ontario is going to pay them handsomely a severance so they do not sue. That's 100,000 people suing at between $50,000 and $100,000 apiece if they have to sue, or getting packages of $50,000 to $100,000 apiece. That means $5 to $10 billion on the taxpayer to send these people free. This is not a way of saving money. This is a way of losing money.
Yeah, but when we look at that perspective, though, I mean, how much are we spending on these people if their continued employment goes on for a couple of years?
Well, this is the thing. So I'm listening to Mr. Hudak this morning on one radio station saying that it appears to me he knew he maybe misstepped with this cutting 100,000 jobs. Here he is on the one hand promising to build a million jobs, I guess, bring a million jobs, and he's on the other hand saying, well, we'll start out doing that by cutting it. There was a joke I saw on Twitter. It was just the most beautiful thing. It went something like this, quote, "I'm a Nigerian prince. I have 1 million jobs for you. To begin the process, please send 100,000 jobs." Tim Hudak.
I haven't seen that one yet.
And that's exactly the insanity of this. So, I don't think it's a credible plan. And when I heard him this morning saying, well, the way it would work is over the next 4 years, we'll get rid of those 100,000. Okay, so now he's down to spreading it over 4 years, even though he wanted to balance the budget in 2 years with this plan. And then he says, and part of it will be dealt with by attrition. 200,000 jobs will be gone through attrition. Well, that's people retiring. Well, if they're retiring already, then what are you talking about when you're talking about 100,000 that you're going to cut? Is the 100,000 in addition to the 200,000? Is it part of the 200,000? If so, why are you even mentioning it, since these people are retiring anyway? And it comes across as entirely dishonest, something you can't really trust, a bunch of baffle cap, and I think that's all it really is.
When we look at the budget issue entirely, and this is something we've talked about on the program before, you and I, is the question of healthcare and education spending. And I think your thesis that you've put forward in the Freedom Party's budget, as well as something that I've seen as well, which is that you can't really even begin to have a discussion about the debt, about the budget, without addressing healthcare and education. Now, these are two areas where there does not seem to be much discussion by any of the candidates right now.
Right. And we're putting it front and center. I mean, the budget plan is our electoral plan as well. It's our election position on the budget. And if you look at the way you do it, to do it properly without sending 100,000 people home with pink slips, the way you do it is by restructuring the way we deal with the biggest ticket item on the entire budget, which is healthcare, as you say. And the way you do that is by moving it from a taxpayer-funded system into a crown corporation that people can either choose to continue paying into or can choose alternatives. I'm hearing more and more tragedies, really, from people in London who aren't getting the service that their taxes are paying for. And the reality is, most of us aren't using the system at the present time. When we suddenly need the system, we realize how bad it is. And dead people don't vote. Yeah. So, that's the reality. And the reason it's getting bad, the Liberals are secretly and quietly cutting here, cutting there, cutting back on what can be obtained through the government monopoly healthcare system, paring it down. But the problem with the whole thing is it's a system of rationing, not a system of delivering quality as its first goal. In fact, the system wasn't even designed to make the sick and injured well. It was designed, it was only thought of as financially feasible if, in fact, the system was guided toward the problem of keeping people healthy. So it was never really designed when they adopted it in 1969. That was the Progressive Conservatives, incidentally, that banned the existing system and put in the government monopoly. It was never intended to be a system that took care of the sick and injured. It was intended to be a system that, keeps people from getting ill or injured. And that's why you have things like seatbelt laws and, a number of things to keep people from hurting themselves or from getting in, vaccines and etc. That's where they want to put their money. The problem is you can't give yourself a vaccine for cancer. You can't give yourself a vaccine for the heart attack you're going to have. The whole notion was wrong from the get-go. And if you listen to what Tommy Douglas actually said, just shortly after, the monopoly was imposed by the Progressive Conservatives, he said, I really love this system, but we knew from the get-go that if it was not switched into one that just kept the healthy, then it would not be financially sustainable and the public would turn against it. I think that's what we're seeing now.
Yes, certainly. And I know you mentioned seatbelts, and we've seen actually along that vein a lot of these sort of preventative measures, not even preventative health care. They're really behavioral in a sense. And one of the big ones that comes to mind is the Deb Matthews, incidentally, London North Centre MPP and candidate, putting forward calorie counts on menus. And we've seen in the Liberal budget recently increasing tobacco taxes, so increasing revenue instead of reducing spending. But what do you make of these sort of sin taxes or these behavior-based initiatives by government?
Those are desperate measures to try and keep the cost of healthcare down in a system where people keep demanding more and more healthcare because they aren't paying for it as they go. I mean, if I have itchy skin, I can walk into a hospital nowadays and get treated. I have a right to treatment at the hospital with nothing more than a rash. And that's going to cost the hospital a ton of money. Now, if I had to actually plunk down the money that it's costing the hospital to provide me that service in the hospital for a rash, I would think twice, perhaps go to my doctor instead of going to a hospital, perhaps buy something off the shelf instead of assuming that I've got cancer or something that's very, so this system almost breeds hypochondria because it doesn't cost you anything other than a visit to the hospital to find out whether you're still okay.
We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to actually take your calls and chat with the Freedom Party of Ontario leader Paul McKeever a little bit more. 519-643-2222 or 1-866-354-8255. What would you like to hear from this man who wants to be the next Premier of Ontario? More of the Andrew Lawton Show in just a few moments on AM 980.
Handbags for Hospice, brought to you by High Street Asset Management. June 18th, join us at the Lamplighter Inn for this special event with live auctions, raffles, and more in support of our local hospice branch. Come bid, buy, and donate to help a great cause. Details on the events page at am980.ca.
Looky here, a city slicker.
They call me Dead-Eye Dave.
That 'cause you wear them fancy specs?
Nope, it's 'cause I can do this.
Did you learn that?
Wrangling deals at Cummins Optical. I never miss when I take aim at a great deal. Like this month, get anti-reflection coating for just $50.
Well, roll me in cow grease and call me a biscuit.
Mosey on over to Westbound Shopping Center, partner, and lasso a great deal on anti-reflective lenses. Now, half price at Cummins Optical.
The robins are chirping, leaves on trees are almost blooming, and Parks Blueberries bushes are now being pruned. Spring has finally sprung, and Parks is open for the season. See the bake shop for yummy baked pies, scones, and muffins, the cafe for fresh sandwiches and hot soup, and the retail store has plenty of new and unique gift ideas. And as always, frozen blueberries are available for you to take home. Take the beautiful drive to the country to Parks Blueberries.
Here at Parks Blueberries and Country Store.
Between Bothwell and Thamesville on Highway 2.
The 2014 Lexus IS250 F-Sport is one hot car. Because it's luxurious? Powerful? Yes and yes. But is that why they're flying off the lot? Nah. I think it's because people know it's a great deal. And right now, the IS250 F-Sport comes with a $1,250 delivery credit. And we're making your first lease payment. It's one hot car and one smoking deal. I'm Chris Pinelli, and your hot new Lexus is patiently waiting at Lexus of London today. Lexus of London, Warncliffe Road South.
It's no secret, I love fishing and hunting. Do you? Well, if you do, you don't want to miss this. The Angler and Hunter Radio Show has returned for another season of timely tips and tactics, as well as current issues that affect Ontario anglers and hunters. Tune in to catch more fish, bag more game, and win some amazing cash and prizes. Join me, Randy Jennings, for Angler and Hunter Saturday afternoon at 1 right here on AM 980.
The Andrew Lawton Show. Call now, 519-643-2222, or toll free 1-866-354-8255.
Welcome back. This is Canada's most irreverent talk show. We're sitting down live in studio with Freedom Party of Ontario leader and London-Fanshawe candidate Paul McKeever in the provincial election, which is just a few weeks away on June 12th. And we've been talking about a lot of issues, actually, in a short period of time already, talking about the debt, talking about health care, education, all of these issues that are front and center in this campaign. And I wanted to give you, our listeners, the opportunity to weigh in with your questions for Paul. 519-643-2222 is the number to call, or 1-866-354-8255. We will start with Anne. Anne, go ahead.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. I personally support the NDP primarily because we have a massive, massive problem with corruption in Ontario. And they want the ombudsman to go in, and people that downplay the office don't really understand it. I'd like him to go in, and quite frankly, I'd like police to be involved in these organizations and doing something about them, including Orange, hospitals, and Children's Aid especially. I'm wondering if Paul, because he's an honest man, I know him, can tell me or the public, what does the Freedom Party plan to do about the corruption in this province? Because in my opinion, I think we have a mob problem in Ontario, the same as Quebec. And we've been told this by media as well.
All right, appreciate the call, Ann. We will give Paul McKeever a chance to respond. Paul, what do you make of that?
Well, I know that there are some people who would like the ombudsman to have broadened powers, and I think that's the appropriate approach. You don't want to make it into a partisan thing, these investigations. It has to be at arm's length, and I think that's the appropriate way to go.
So you support more sort of oversight of these provincial agencies by the ombudsman?
Yeah, it's not as though it's a very expensive procedure, and I think it saves the taxpayer and it protects the public, quite frankly.
The other side question to that is about the scandals we've seen in the last few years in Ontario themselves. I mean, there seems to be no shortage of them. I mean, we have from Orange and e-health and gas plants and all of these things. Is this, in your eyes, a Liberal Party of Ontario problem, or is this a government problem?
Well, to some extent, all governments and all parties are going to suffer. I mean, the Orange thing, for example, yes, it's a failure on the part of the minister to engage in more oversight, perhaps read reports that should have been read rather than just hand it off to police and whatnot or investigators. So I'm not going to take any blame off the minister in that case. But it's certainly going to be the case that the bigger the government is, the more agencies it's funding, especially ones that are largely running by themselves, not as necessarily part of the civil service, but being paid by the government. Those are going to be the ones that inevitably will run into these scandals. You know, someone's overpaying themselves. This wasn't the intended purpose of the program. We didn't intend to make someone rich off the taxpayer, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think, again, that ombudsman role can be extended to help safeguard against that kind of abuse.
I got an email from David asking you a question. He says, what do you think about public sector unions and political contributions? Should the laws be changed surrounding that?
No, I don't think there's any need at this point. I haven't seen the case for it. A public sector union is nothing other than an association, an unincorporated association of individuals. There's nothing wrong with collective agreements. In fact, many businesses could never possibly have individual contracts with every single employee they have. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both kinds of work arrangement between employer and employee. I've never really understood this union bashing by Mr. Hudak at all. It's not a question of, you know, I'm in the union, you're not in the union, you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy. We're all Ontarians. And these are just work arrangements that are in the interests not only of the employees, but in the interests of the employers in many cases.
But don't you think the criticisms leveled against public sector unions, which are operating essentially on taxpayer money? I mean, I understand that it's coming out of salaries, which are coming out of the taxpayer trough. Shouldn't the public have a little more oversight into those unions' operations, especially when they are essentially using that money for political efforts?
Well, again, I mean, you look at, there are some to some extent the law has gone too far, not with respect to unions, but with respect to oversight. There are these strangling regulations that require parties to report certain donations within, I think it's a 10-day span, and all because of past instances of corruption. So, for example, this what they call real-time reporting of contributions above $100 per year came about because the Liberals had a party, and surprise, surprise, somebody was at the party who was a developer, and you know, that kind of thing happens, and you start wondering about special favors. I don't think that unions, though, are a peculiar case. They're representing numerous people all at once. If you ask me about, whether an individual union member should have choice about whether he contributes or not, you know, to me, that's you choose to join the union. You choose to join the union on its terms, and if you choose to work with the employer who requires you to join the union first, those are the terms. You're not required to take the job.
I think the other related issue is going to minimum wages. Now, minimum wage is something that we've obviously had increased repeatedly. What would you say to respond to changes that have been put in recently, as well as your approach to that moving forward if you're elected?
Well, I wouldn't say that we have any plans to raise the minimum wage ever. I think right now it's probably already causing, in fact, we know that it has caused the loss of tens of thousands of jobs, and we know that because before the Liberals increased the minimum wage, they had reports on their table telling them this is what it's going to cost in terms of job losses. They did it anyway. It was purely done for electoral reasons. It wasn't done for the good of the economy. It wasn't done for the good of workers. And it's not a good plan. Now, inflation takes care of minimum wage laws over time. In other words, most people aren't paid what they're paid because of minimum wage laws. Most of the people who come to see me aren't coming with a minimum wage. They're making usually at least $12 or $15 an hour, and usually considerably more. And that's because $20 an hour doesn't buy what it used to buy. And so, most of the minimum wage jobs are, at this point, going to be found in things like services industry, coffee,
for sure.
And most of those jobs are going to be taken on either to support a person through school or to support a person in retirement. And I think we've certainly come far enough with that. I don't see any justification for raising the minimum wage at all.
Going to go to the phones again. Andy, what's your question for Paul McKeever?
Well, I believe I love mathematics, and I believe that the media still needs to ask Mr. Hudak some questions. Now, Mr. Hudak said he's going to provide 1 million jobs, right? If you go 1% of 1 million jobs, that's equal 10,000 jobs. Even if I go 1/10 of 1%, that's 1,000 jobs. Could Mr. Hudak please list the names of the employers who would provide just 0.1% of the million jobs, the names of these employers who pledged to hire people? Could you do that, please? Because I find the math is disturbing here.
Yeah, sorry.
That's a fair question, Andy. Paul, how do you respond to that?
That's a perfect question. I find that's right on the mark. I listened to Mr. Hudak this morning on the radio, and one of the callers to this one radio show said, that one of the union leaders has said that there's 60,000 wasteful jobs in middle management. What are you going to do about that? Or are you going to pick on the union guys? Mr. Hudak's immediate response was to say, yes, we've got to trim the fat in middle management and whatnot. Well, I mean, if he's telling us he's never even considered about it. He's never even known about these 60,000 jobs, and suddenly it's a great idea. The way, without even having a look at who these people are, what jobs they do, or anything else, he has not scrutinized this plan at all. He simply picked a number out of a hat because it makes for good headlines.
Yeah, the 472,489 jobs plan doesn't have the same zeal to it all. So go to the phones. One more question here. Gwyneth, what's your question for Paul McKeever?
Yeah, thanks for having him on, too. I am voting for the Freedom Party. I've got to get a sign for my lawn for El Gretzky. I just wanted to ask, I listened to you, and then the phone rang, and I missed, you're talking about these, the turbines, none of them have said a thing about these turbines. Are you planning on taking these damn things down? Because the hydro bills are, this is something people should really be up in arms about, are these hydro bills and what this Liberal government has done, and that no one has anything to really say about anything.
We're coming up to the end of the segment here, but I will give Paul McKeever a chance to respond, Gwyneth, to your question. So, Paul, yeah, the energy and turbines, we weren't talking about them, but they are certainly an issue that I think a lot of Ontarians have been weighed in on.
Yep, energy is one of our top 3 issues in this election. We're pulling the plug on the Liberal plan altogether. We're going to restore those affordable rates that were there before. The windmills will have to, there won't be any new ones purchased by the province if Freedom Government is formed. I'll tell you that right now. And the ones that do exist won't be permitted to continue to turn if they're not able to deliver electricity at competitive rates. There's no point in those things turning and causing all the problems that they cause if they can't deliver electricity affordably.
Fair enough. We are unfortunately out of time for this segment, but I want to give a big thanks to Paul McKeever, leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario, for coming on the program. Paul, it was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Andrew.
And Indra, we are having tomorrow a debate of the London North Centre candidates, next week London West, and in 2 weeks Paul will be back for the London-Fanshawe candidates debate here on this show, which is 2 Fridays from tomorrow. So that'll be lots of fun. Got to take a quick break here. More of the Andrew Lawton Show in just a few moments on AM 980. Stay with us.